and up to 35 in Savannah. Off the coast, we're looking at 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts off of Bowie along the coast of South Carolina. As a result, we do have tropical alerts because we are feeling the effects. We will feel the effects of Hurricane Ian in just a few hours. We're looking at 13 million people impacted. We do have tropical storm watches, warnings along North Carolina. Then we have a hurricane warning along South Carolina. That is where we expect landfall somewhere between Myrtle Beach and Charleston, a little closer to Charleston and a little closer to Georgetown, South Carolina. That's what it looks like right now. Taking a look at flood alerts, many people impacted, millions and millions, 15 million people impacted by a flood watch. That is in green. It impacts portions of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, into a small part of Georgia, including Savannah. We're also looking at flash flood warnings. Those are the red boxes. That means flooding is happening right now. We are so ahead of the storm right now. So it's an indication of what we're going to see as we go throughout time here. Heavy, heavy rain that could lead to life-threatening flash flooding. We're going to see power outages with trees coming down. The ground's going to be really wet. So let's take a look at the track because it is close. We're looking at Hurricane Ian not too far from the coast. We're looking at an afternoon landfall somewhere around 4 p.m. as a Category 1 storm. We see those winds probably will be right around 85 miles per hour. The cone is pretty small, so there's a big consensus that we're going to see the land falling anywhere between Myrtle Beach and also Charleston. We're looking at hurricane force winds as it makes that landfall. And notice how far these tropical storm force winds go, because typically we talk about the cone, we focus on the cone, but that really is only telling us where the center is going to pass over land. You want to look well outside the cone for the impacts of rain. We're going to feel rain in the mid-Atlantic, even up to the northeast tomorrow, and we're going to feel those tropical storm force winds 265 miles outside the center of this system. It's going to weaken rapidly as it makes landfall. Unlike yesterday where it held on to that strength in Florida, we're going to see that weaken into a remnant low, but it still doesn't change the water story. That changes the wind story. We're going to see the winds die down a bit, but we're going to really see that water story going on in terms of the storm surge, also rainfall. So you guys, we could see 4 to 7 foot storm surge, and that's a wall of water. It's fast, it's furious. We saw all those pictures out of Florida, the damage it caused. So that's our main concern as we go throughout the rest of this Friday. Back to you.
Oh, absolutely. And this late into the storm, still talking about a storm surge that high. Wow. All right, Michelle, thank you so much. We'll be back to you.
Sure.
And now we've got a closer look at the devastation caused by Hurricane Ian along the Gulf Coast.
That includes Sanibel Island, now completely cut off from the mainland after Ian made landfall less than 20 miles away. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky got a first-hand look at the damage there. Morgan, it's good to see you. What can you tell us about what you're seeing?
Yeah, Savannah Sinclair, good morning. And this should be day 2 of a very long recovery process. But as we listen, there are still search and rescue helicopters overhead at this hour trying to account for everyone who could be left stranded or still missing. One area especially hard hit, as you mentioned, was Sanibel Island, now completely cut off as a result of Hurricane Ian. This tight-knit community witnessing some of the worst of what this storm left behind. This morning, communities on Florida's Gulf Coast left cut off. Sanibel Island, once a picturesque escape for vacationers, now the scene of complete devastation.
It got hit with really biblical storm surge, and it washed away roads, it washed away structures.
The island taking the brunt of Ian's impact as the monstrous storm made landfall. Time-lapse video shows the storm surge drowning the area, the wall of water rising an estimated 8 to 15 feet.
I mean, there's just stuff going everywhere. I've never seen damage like this. I've lived here my whole life. It's unreal.
Boats tossed like toys. The lone bridge connecting the island cracked and crumbled, with the storm's 140-mile-an-hour winds putting some sections totally underwater.
We've had about 200 households that didn't evacuate on the island that we know of.
Anyone still trapped on the isolated island now waiting for rescue by boat or air. We joined the Lee County Sheriff as he surveyed some of the hardest hit areas to see the full scope of Ian's power.
The heart sinks when you look down and you know that as we are speaking right now, there are people that want us and need us, and we can't get to them.
People like Jack and Betty Hennard, an elderly couple who hasn't been heard from since the storm hit their condo.
The worst part is the wait and the unknown and not knowing if they're okay.
Their son Scott says his parents were unable to evacuate in time and forced to hunker down on their ground floor.
She said there was no water before. Now the water's 3 to 4 feet. It's rushing rapidly. We're stuck here in this clubhouse. We can't get across to higher grounds.
Even on Florida's mainland, near the famed Fort Myers Beach, the damage is historic.
You ain't gonna be able to get in that house safely.
We met John Strong, a volunteer out checking on neighbors, hoping to help those who lost everything from a storm that rewrote the rules.
We were Irma ready.
But not Ian.
No, absolutely not.
And unfortunately, that's the sentiment we have heard from so many people here. They had seen Irma, another powerful hurricane, come in 2017. They thought they were ready for Ian, but the sheer power of this hurricane has definitely changed how everyone feels as a result of these storms. And the damage behind me, just a testament to that. We do know power's been restored to about 1 million Floridians. That leaves still 1 million more in the dark. And as for Sanibel Island, it could take years before that causeway is back up and running. In the meantime, they are trying to figure out some sort of ferry service for the hundreds of people who call that place home. Guys.
Absolutely. And you hear about the volunteers and watch them walking through the floodwaters, which, by the way, is dangerous in and of itself, to try to help their neighbors. Morgan Chesky, thank you so much. We appreciate your reporting.
And for more, let's bring in Major Carlisle Gargis. He's the area commander for the Salvation Army serving the Fort Myers area. Good morning, Major Gargis. Thank you for joining us, especially on a day like this. So what is your top priority in your response to this storm and helping areas like Sanibel Island?
Well, thank you for allowing me to be on this morning. Top priorities are getting our teams out into the field to deliver, basic food and sustenance for people trying to get their lives back together, trying to find their houses. Matter of fact, can't even get to my house even now. And we continue to bring in more assets from the Salvation Army. I know we have a large strike team coming in from Texas. It will be in later today. And hopefully this weekend we'll be able to ramp up to providing over 15,000 meals a day. So a lot of things are happening here. We're very busy and we're on the ground, and we are helping our neighbors, our neighbors that we love and that we serve with here in our community.
Major Gargis, it's so incredible to hear you talking about helping your neighbors as you're unable to even get to your own home. And again, we appreciate your time while you're dealing with all of this. Tell us what resources are in place as people begin the difficult process of cleanup and recovery, but also for people just like yourself who can't even get home right now. What do you have to help people?
Well, right now at the Salvation Army, we're providing, again, basic food is going out, water. Of course, we don't have any clean water here. Water system is down, so we're getting water into folks. And we also are hoping to get some tarps and some other supplies in to help people patch their roofs so they won't be leaking anymore. I mean, it's really all hands on deck doing whatever we can do with whatever we've got to make it happen.
And Major, when we see tragedies like this, often there are mass calls for fundraising and people saying, we want to help. What are you hearing? What do people need the most on the ground?
Well, while we talked about food, we talked about all kinds of things anything that you would need in your house and that you use every day is all gone. And the best way for us to handle that is for folks to they can simply donate to 1-800-SAL-ARMY. That way I can bulk order and have stuff drop shipped to right where I'm at. So that cuts down on having to have other resources to move supplies and to sort supplies. We're able to bring them right in, already ready to go. And so 1-800-SAL-ARMY is the easy way to do that.
I was just about to ask, what's the best way for people who are watching to give help? Can you just tell us a little bit about when someone does call that number, what exactly that means? If they are donating there, what type of things are being purchased and how they are getting directly to people who need it?
Right. They're able to take their information, they're able to give with their credit card or however, and then I'm able to put in, because of that, I'm able to actually put in an order what I need and what I'm hearing people are requiring, and I'm able to get those in here, the supplies that they need, because I'm in a 3-county area, so I'm actually shipping stuff to multiple areas around, because everyone has been impacted. The devastation is widespread, and we're just grateful for help for folks that are thinking about the Salvation Army. And also, one other thing, please pray for our people. Think of our people here, because we're just getting started, and these are some really tough days, but we are a people of hope. And we like to say in the Salvation Army that hope is on the way.
That's certainly something everybody can do that doesn't cost them anything. But we did have right there on the screen how you can help.
Yes, and hope is key. We appreciate you echoing that sentiment as you're going through so much. Major Carlisle Gargis, thank you.
Continue to stay safe, and we'll be thinking about you and your home. We'll check in. And we are following other news this morning as well. Coming up, are we headed towards a recession? Low unemployment and high inflation, where the economy stands and what it means for your budget ahead.
Plus, a dangerous hit on the field outrage this morning after Miami's quarterback suffers a blow to the head. The latest on his condition next.
News is happening now. Look at what's making headlines around the world. Whenever it happens, wherever you are, it's here now. To cover the news, you have to be in it. This is how so many towns and cities are protecting themselves. They're pushing the gates open. Was there a school officer on campus? That's what we've been told.
No. Top story with Tom Yamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
And what do you love about fatherhood?
The chaos, the learning. Is climate change one of your top priorities?
What's your message to girls who want to make a difference in their own communities?
Believe in yourself.
A masked killer takes aim and fires. A fatal attraction that leads investigators to turn towards their own. Internal Affairs, a new podcast from Dateline. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Our show is about sparking conversations around today's biggest issues. The Fed raises interest rates. That controls inflation. Explain how that works. Is part of this that everyone's rethinking their jobs and their relationship to their employers? Could you just remind us why there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court instead of 3 or 20 or 2? It's not my job to tell you what to think. My job is to think about what you tell me.
Now Tonight with Joshua Johnson, streaming weeknights at 8 on NBC News Now.
Right now on NBC News Now, we begin with breaking news just coming in.
What's happening now, what's happening next, and what it means for you.
We're continuing to follow the Russian attack on Ukraine.
There's an intense artillery battle underway.
As we look out over the latest city-turned-crime scene, we see the things left behind.
Fewer people are content to just offer their thoughts and prayers.
Stunning testimony at the January 6th hearing.
Americans face the highest inflation rate in decades.
Parts of Virginia cleaning up after severe storms.
Flames forcing thousands to evacuate. When do I play meteorologist? Only when the heat is this bad.
Another special night of election coverage right here at NBC News Now.
Results are coming in.
This Tuesday is going to be huge.
This is big when we're talking about November.
This feels like an ideological fight to the death. Is there room for common ground?
What do you think when you see the activism? Do you think this could have happened without social media? We're coming on the air with the news, NBC Scoop.
Bringing the news to you is not only a job, it's an honor. To cover the news, you have to be in it. This is how so many towns and cities are protecting themselves. They're pushing the gates open. Was there a school officer on campus? That's what we've been told.
No. Top story with Tom Yamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand, so we've created a newscast just for them. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
No stress, no mess, just yum.
That's it.
Now Tonight with Joshua Johnson, streaming weeknights at 8 on NBC News Now.
We're back now with the latest on the uncertain economy. And if it seems like a confusing time to you with high inflation and low unemployment, you're not alone. Veteran economists are divided over what it all means and whether it's going to get better or worse in the near term. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello joins us now from Washington. Tom, yesterday we got even more conflicting information on whether or not we are in a recession. People at home are confused and stressed. Tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. I mean, we got GDP numbers showing the economy has contracted this year, but applications for unemployment benefits fell to their lowest level since the spring. Big retailers are signaling that consumers are pulling back on their spending. Facebook, parent company Meta, putting a hiring freeze in place. Meanwhile, there are signs that gas prices may come down even further.
Yet another closing bell on Wall Street, bringing more red arrows to Americans' retirement and college savings accounts. Here's the big picture. The broad S&P index is now sitting at 2-year lows, down 23% this year, while the tech-heavy NASDAQ has lost 31%. Inflation and recession fears are the big drivers. One inflation indicator hitting Americans in the pocketbook, new mortgage rates have skyrocketed to 6.8%, the highest since 2007. Near Boston, Aaron Burdoff and his wife, Annie Springfield, would like to buy a bigger house for their growing family, but with few homes on the market, they are getting priced out.
Obviously, a higher sticker price, in addition to a higher mortgage rate, obviously compounds the problem.
Meanwhile, more concerned that the economy is in or is headed for a recession, with GDP numbers suggesting the economy has been shrinking this year. That's the typical definition of a recession. But there is nothing typical about this economy. Inflation is running at 40-year highs despite a drop in gas prices. Yet unemployment remains at a 50-year low. Companies are reluctant to lay off employees amid a worker shortage.
We're not in recession, but obviously recession risks down the road here are quite high.
So what should families do? If you've got a long-term time horizon, most financial pros recommend you keep contributing to your investment accounts, but also prioritize paying down debt and conserve cash. Some online banks are offering 3% interest on savings accounts. Government I-bonds are offering 9.6%. CNBC's Sharon Epperson covers personal finance.
Cash is absolutely king right now. Try to get the best return you can for your cash, but bottom line, make sure you're liquid. Make sure you have some cash on hand.
All right, another factor that is moving the markets. We are closely watching what is happening in the UK. Financial markets are delivering a no-confidence vote to the British government's economic strategy. That is sending the pound to near-record lows against the dollar. And yes, we're talking about the once mighty pound. One more point, guys. We are now averaging $3.79 a gallon on gasoline. That's well below the $5 we were paying in June. And most experts are now thinking we could go to $3.50 a gallon by Halloween, as long as we don't see another hurricane hit the Gulf Coast, hit oil facilities, and it's all dependent on what happens with Russia and Ukraine and that whole strategy playing out. Back to you guys.
Absolutely. Lots of variables there, but at least a little bit of good news for now. Tom, thank you so much.
And now to more financial headlines, starting with Nike and its high inventory levels driven by supply chain issues.
Bertha Coombs is back with us with that and other business news this morning. Hey, Bertha.
Hey, how are you, ladies? We've got shares of Nike this morning are going to be a big drag on the Dow. For the past 2 years, the company said that it didn't have enough inventory to meet consumer demand. Well, now it has too much. The company says higher discounts and shipping costs squeezed its profits in its most recent quarter. It's going to mark down even more goods, particularly when it comes to apparel, not so much when it comes to shoes. And you'll see a lot of those bargains coming into the holiday shopping season. Meantime, Google is shutting down its Stadia gaming service after nearly 3 years. What's Stadia? Well, that's the problem. A lot of folks didn't really get into it. It failed to attract enough interest. So gaming companies overall are facing a slowdown in demand from the highs that we saw during the pandemic, and inflation is causing some consumers to cut back on their entertainment spending. So Google's going to refund all purchases made through the Google and Stadia stores, and players will still be able to play games through mid-January. And it's been a rough year for Peloton as demand has dropped for its fitness gear. As part of its turnaround plan, the company started selling products through Amazon. Now Peloton has a brick-and-mortar deal with Dick's Sporting Goods. You'll be able to walk into any store and buy a bike, tread, or guide after seeing it in person. Dick's employees will be trained to help shoppers with the equipment. Peloton will handle delivery and setup, at least to start with. A lot of changes at that company.
Yeah, there's no shortage of news coming from Peloton, that's for sure.
I like the sound of it, though. I got into biking during the pandemic.
I'm a Peloton fan. Don't get me wrong.
Bertha, thank you so much.
Thanks,
I've been a little scared.
All right, and now to some news from the NFL. The Dolphins star quarterback suffered a frightening injury to his head and neck in a game against the Bengals. He was taken off the field on a stretcher as worried teammates and fans looked on. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has the details.
This was very difficult to watch. The young star's head bouncing on the field after taking a nasty hit. Thankfully, we're told he was expected to be discharged from the hospital overnight and fly home with the team. But the incident is raising questions about whether he should have been playing in the first place.
You think about the back, the ankle, but he gets thrown to the ground. players, fans, and viewers watching the game at home, holding their collective breath after a frightening injury on the field in a game between the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Dolphins' young star quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, lying motionlessly, his fingers contorted in front of his helmet after a sack that left him seemingly unconscious on the field. Commentator Al Michaels saying this after talking to longtime trainer and sports medicine analyst Mike Ryan.
When he sees that, he's watching this as you are as well, it's a neurological response to head trauma.
Tua remained on the turf for more than 7 minutes before he was taken off the field into a hospital. The Dolphins saying he suffered head and neck injuries, adding he is conscious and has movement in all his extremities. The Dolphins head coach saying Tua likely suffered a concussion.
That was an emotional moment. That is not part of the deal that anyone signs up for.
The injury comes just 4 days after Tua hit his head in Sunday's matchup against the Buffalo Bills that appeared to leave him disoriented after getting up.
And Tua, he's woozy.
Tua briefly left that game, but later returned to lead his team to victory after clearing concussion protocol during halftime.
I kind of hit my back and kind of hurt, and then I got up, and then that's kind of like why I stumbled. My back kind of locked up on me. But for the most part, I'm good past whatever concussion protocol they had.
After Tua's quick return to Sunday's game, the